Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my breakdown for My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 13. And when it comes to this episode, we covered probably the shortest amount of chapters in any of the anime episodes so far, as we cover 3 chapters, chapters 294, pages 8 through 17, chapter 295, as well as we address a previous chapter not addressed in the anime in chapter 220, pages 1 through 11. And we'll talk about that shortly, but let's get more into the breakdown proper. For starters, the first part of this episode is pretty much recap from what we saw with the last episode, as we get to see Deku and all of the heroes reacting to what's going on with Gigantomachia and Endeavor, as well as we get the resolve from Mr. Compress as he's captured by the heroes as he's about to give his one monologue. This is where the anime does something different and potentially unique by readapting something that was not adapted last season, which was when you have the villains actually going up against the CRC, Creature Rejection Clan. And this is very important because it has to deal with a fair amount of character development for characters such as Spinner as well as the League of Villains. So it's great that this is finally getting adapted into the manga proper because it wasn't adapted previously in Season 5. While we do get this readapted into the anime, there are some scenes that are cut from the anime that was in the manga. For starters, what is pretty much intact is that we get to see the villains with a new scene heading towards the Creature Rejection Clan home. And we do get to see Shigaraki actually decay one of the members in this place, but we immediately cut from there to the League of Villains pretty much going through all of the stuff as the people are on the floor dead. And in the manga, we get to see the characters actually go out of their way to kill the people in the Creature Rejection Clan. Something else that is different from the manga when it comes to the anime is that we do have more of a narration from the viewpoint of Mr. Compress, while in the manga, it was more from the perspective of Spinner. But speaking of Spinner, even in this part of the episode, we get the needed development for Spinner as we get revealed his backstory that may not have necessarily been completely in Season 5, as well as we get to see a little bit more of the interactions between the League of Villain members with each other. Now, even though this was something that was supposed to be in Season 5, I do enjoy how they are able to recontextualize this from the perspective of Mr. Compress as a moment that he enjoyed being with the League of Villain members, as he says that he likes to be a part of the League of Villains in this episode. So with that, we get a little bit more into Mr. Compress's big moment in this episode and his big moment in the arc, which is pretty much Mr. Compress destroying his body to try and rescue and save his fellow League members. And we see that even though it is not exactly how it was in the manga, it is still very much graphic in what he's doing to his body. And we'll get a little bit more into how much damage his body actually takes, but we do get to see a few scenes of him actually rescuing Skeptic, while it cuts to some added scenes and some expansions of some scenes that we saw in the manga involving Mr. Compress's backstory, where we do get to see Mr. Compress and his relationship to a very famous villain under the name of Oji Haruma, as we get an expanded scene of him being able to evade being shot at by police officers and jumping out of a window, which is not in the manga, as well as we get the speech that he apparently gives to Mr. Compress in the scene, but it's depicted as Mr. Compress as a child speaking most likely to what is assumedly his grandfather, his father, or potentially his great-grandfather. And this is just a really nice expansion of the scene from the manga and gives Mr. Compress a little bit more to do with when it comes to his backstory. And this isn't the end of Mr. Compress's moment, but we do cut away to see some extraordinary action between Shoto and Dabi, as we once again get an amazing sequence animated between Dabi and Shoto fighting with a slight change of how their abilities are used. In the manga, it seems to be that they are both using Flash Fire Fist Jet Burn, but in the anime, we see that that is the move that Dabi is using, but that Shoto is actually using a different version of it called Kindling. And as Shoto is sent back and Dabi decides to retreat because Endeavor is unconscious and his plan cannot come into fruition, we see that Compress is able to turn him into a marble. And later on in the episode, we see that this is due to the fact that he wanted both Skeptic and Dabi to escape from this battle unharmed, relatively speaking. And as we are getting more into Mr. Compress's final moments, we do get some added action scenes with characters such as Ida as well as Nejire, as we also get Mr. Compress finally revealing what his face looks like. And yes, he is a very handsome man because that's just something that Horikoshi likes to do with the villains. But from there, we get something very unique to the anime, which is a totally original scene that is not seen in the manga, involving some heroes right next to a defeated Nomu, as we get to see other heroes fighting against the Nomus, and specifically we get to see Burnin throwing down against the Nomu that Miria was able to punch away from her that was attacking her. And as we see that Burnin is fighting against this Nomu, we are introduced to a new hero called Drill Master. He probably has one of the most gruesome scenes in the entire anime, as he's able to defeat the Nomu while the Nomu literally crunches him in half as blood squirts everywhere. And even though he may not be a very prominent character, the fact that he was willing to give up his life is the true embodiment of what a hero does, and that this kind of thing will obviously have an effect on the people around them, which is why we see Burnin immediately charging in afterwards. So I really like this new edit scene because it adds to just the dread and the despair that is happening to the heroes, and how this war is having consequences because people are dying. And speaking of dying, this has nothing to do with what I'm about to bring up next, but we do get to see that Deku is beginning to wake up after what happened to him previously. And this is when we are finally revealed to one of Deku's brand new quirks that has been unlocked throughout this war, as it is the quirk that is related to the fourth user called Danger Sense. And from what we see with the anime, his Danger Sense seems to be very much associated with the color green, which makes sense because of the fourth user also having a color scheme associated with green. So maybe this is something that the anime will keep moving forward every time Deku uses Danger Sense. But speaking of danger, most likely his Danger Sense is about to go off as we cut over to Mr. Compress trying to buy time for Spinner to wake up Shigaraki. We see that he has taken a whole bunch of damage as he was able to pretty much rip the clothes off of his body that was restraining him due to the help of Best Jeanist, and how his entire goal and plan was to buy time for Spinner to eventually wake up Shigaraki. And as Spinner is about to and tries to wake up Shigaraki, he looks at a hand and places it on Shigaraki's face due to the connection that Tomura has with the hands, which has some cool imagery that eventually leads to Tomura Shigaraki waking up, or so we think. And as Tomura wakes up, we see that he sends out a burst of radio waves that eventually causes the Nomu in the nearby area to come towards his direction to allow him to escape. This leads to an added scene that we didn't get in the manga that demonstrates Deku's Danger Sense sensing the danger within the nearby vicinity. And then Tomura begins to speak, however his voice is twisted and contorted, as it's most likely revealed to us that this is not Tomura speaking, but All For One. As we get some added and expanded scenes of the Nomu heading towards the direction of All For One as the heroes follow in pursuit. This is leading to a very impactful moment involving All For One taking over Tomura's body, as we see the Nomu are heading in his direction with a new scene of Best Jeanist trying to restrain the Nomu. We also get to see the scene of Spinner becoming to realize that the character that he is talking to right now is actually not Tomura Shigaraki, but eventually he comes to the realization that it is All For One. And this is where the anime decides to take a lot more liberties with what is happening than what we see in the manga, where we get a whole bunch of action scenes before the Nomu actually arrive to take Tomura and the rest of the League of Villain members away. These scenes include characters such as Mirio being taken out by All For One as he begins to try and restrain him, as we get to see characters such as Shoto and Ida going in for the attack but eventually gets pushed back. In the manga, none of these scenes happen, but they happen to add a little bit more weight to the fact that the heroes are defeated in this moment. And as we see the Nomu finally approach All For One in this moment and begin taking him away, we get probably the coolest scene of this episode of Deku literally using Black Whip with Froppy style to propel himself forward so that he would be able to catch up to Tomura being taken over by All For One while dodging the rivered stabs while clinging onto him. And here is where we get the most impactful part of this entire war, which involves Deku's resolve, and how All For One is criticizing and chastising Deku in this moment, sending him back. You just have the moment of Deku coming to a realization that he saw that Tomura Shigaraki needed saving and that he wanted to save him. And this is the starting point for most likely how the end of this story will conclude, with Deku eventually saving Tomura Shigaraki. But that isn't actually the end of the episode, because the final part of this episode is pretty much more or less a glorified clip show or slideshow, but done in a very fascinating and enjoyable way with the music that is playing. As we see scenes of the heroes that are just destroyed, all of the heroes are unconscious, other heroes going in and helping everyone else. It's a very somber and very melancholy note, with the music playing, showing definitively that the heroes have lost right when the episode ends. So yeah, I thought that was a very impactful moment, as well as this was a very enjoyable episode and pretty much the penultimate episode for Core 1 of My Hero Academia Season 6. And I apologize if my voice has been a little bit hoarse. I'm not feeling well, but I still wanted to record this video for y'all and to give my thoughts out and my breakdown for this episode of My Hero Academia Season 6. Because I do believe that we're going to be on a short break, so I will not be seeing y'all for a while, but all I can say is that the first core of this Season 6 was amazing. I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed it more than Season 5, enjoyed it more than Season 4, and pretty much enjoyed it on par with the first 3 seasons. Even though there are some critiques that you can make about the season, about it uses more still frames and that there isn't that much animation and how certain scenes were not done justice in comparison to the manga, overall, I still think this was an amazing adaptation of the material that we got in the war at a very well-paced pace, and had a lot of added stuff that really adds to the war for the better. But yeah, this is all I really wanted to say for my breakdown for My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 13. What did you think of the season so far? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you liked it. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And don't forget to hit that notification bell to be notified for whenever I upload more videos like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!